I'm going to talk about some of my previous work, what I've been doing, and show you some examples. And then I will show you some what I think you have to think about when you're designing interfaces for users. I usually try to I want to make things simple, but to make them simple you have to make them complicated. So usually I try to make things complicated to be able to understand and make it simple, to be able to simplify. One question is, of course, what is a purpose? And some TV man said that everyone has a purpose in life. Perhaps your purpose is watching TV. So I mean, purpose is very personal, and it's difficult to say that everyone have the same purpose. Previously, what I will show you, what I was working with, I worked in the industry and we made production lines, and then the purpose was very simple what we were doing. Now I'm working more with interaction design and design of internet, and then the purpose is of course much more difficult. If you have any questions, you can please ask them. Either I write them down or I can ask them directly. My name is Lars Lindmark, and I work with design, or I want to work with more design-oriented than engineering-oriented. And my purpose is to work with complex systems and make them easy to use. So that's what I believe is my purpose here in life. If you look at the UX is, as I see it, is at the top. I don't know if you can see this, but UX is at the top or in the center of everything. And if you take the big pictures, you have technology, you have logic, design, communication, business, and business logic. And the problem with working with the UX is that you have to have a broad understanding of everything. And that's why I think you need to work more with a sort of design process approach where you explore, understand, do some prototypes, test, and then you iterate your products to be able to understand what the users or your customers or your users need. Traditional business or more engineering way of working is more waterfall or steps. But I think as a design perspective, that's quite difficult to work that way. Before, in my previous work, I worked for Tetra Pak in production lines all over the world, and we designed factories with the machines. A lot of this is filling machines, and you have some distribution machines. And all these machines, they had some user interfaces. Some was mechanical, and some was, or many of them were with operator panels with touchscreen. That was already 20 years ago. So all these machines had touchscreens, and then we designed some simple user interfaces for production supervision of the whole plant. So this is an example of an operator panel, user panel to operate one single machine, and then you got all the information that you needed to operate that machine there. And this was one overview of the whole production plant, so they could run and see what they were producing. So we tried to make this very simple, very intuitive, and very simple graphic. And basically, you can say we just use colors to show the state of the machine, and you could see if they were producing some packages and if the machine was stopped. And this, the target group or the user group for this interface was the operator. So they were what we called usually, they didn't have any technical skill. They were there to run production, so it shouldn't be complicated for them to use the interface. So that's why we made it very simple. But also in this complex environment, there was also a lot of technicians that needed to work with the equipment as well. So we needed to make something for them as well, because they also users, depending on, but they use different systems. This is not a real product. It was more a design concept that we was working with, and it was to simulate and to show the whole process in the machine and how to visualize all the information that you have connected to that process. So you could access all the information via this interface. And also on the operator panel, we were thinking of the operator panel was a standalone machine, and at that time it wasn't internet, it didn't exist, and then the internet came with web technology, and then we started to test how to integrate internet technology into these machines, and this is one example how we did it. And then we also started to use with the user process to be able to categorize and structure information in a way that is designed for the user. And these were, in that case, the user process for the plant or for a filling machine. And I think this is something that we maybe have to be better at also when we are designing apps or web applications, to start thinking about what are we going to do and what is the purpose with this page. I see this part as the materials that you work with when you work with US design: technology, logic, design, communication, and business. And this is the type of processes that you use, or the work that you do to be able to make prototypes or to make your products. And it's yeah. I think one problem with UX design, and also particularly internet today, is that there is a lot of things that we don't see. And the human beings, we believe what we see. And we must see to be able to understand how things are working. And if you look at the iceberg, you see this is what we see, but this is everything that's underneath that is needed to be able to produce or to deliver the service that you want to. And the question is then how to visualize, or how to make it easy for the user to understand that we need this. And then I think we have to be better to imagine and understand that you see, depending, even if you talk about the same thing, from different perspective, you see different things. If you look at this cork, for example, for one person it can be a square, for another person it can be a circle, and you see maybe the whole picture. And that's why we need to work more with pictures or work more with models to be able to display that. And I think especially the Swedish word design is more then you usually talk about how things looks like. But in the American word, or the word I would like to use, is design is not about the thing, it's about the thing, what the thing makes us do. So if you have a user interface, it's what it makes you do. That's the design, that's what you have to design. That's the interaction design. And if you take a wrench, for example, the purpose is to open a bolt or something, so that's the purpose you have to design it for. And of course it can be look great, it can be great visual, but usually that works together. Also, when we talk about design and all these different perspectives, it's also a question of, if you have, for example, 3 user groups, if you take the employees, you have the users, and you have maybe the bosses or the owners of the company. Who should decide, or who are your customer? Who is the user? And sometimes when we talk about user, you focus on the real user and say everything that the end user is, he's the priority number 1. And in some companies, it's the boss who is the priority. He tells you what to do, and then you have to do what he tells you. But I will believe to do really good things, you have to focus on the employees first, to be able to, usually they are delivering the service to the customers, and if they have bad interfaces, or if they don't have any good working environment, it's difficult for them to provide good services for your customers. So if you need to prioritize, I think you should start with the employees, and then the users, and third, your owner or manager, especially when you talk about the profession that you're working with and things that you should know how it's working. Of course, your manager knows priorities for the company, but maybe he's not familiar with the priorities that you have been doing as a designer. One problem or one challenge with the design process is that you usually start with nothing. You start with an empty paper, and then you should start finding out what product you're going to do. And if you compare with engineering, we usually have a requirement list where you have a lot of functions that you should do, and then you work with that requirement list and do your user interface and things. So it's different ways of working. And I don't say that one way is right and one way is wrong. It's just that we have 2 ways of working, and it can be good to understand both these 2 different ways of working. And one way to be able to come around this problem with the iceberg is to start visualizing much more. And usually we say that one picture say more than 1,000 words. But I would like to say that one model say more than 1,000 pictures. So if you can make models of what you're doing, it's much more, it's better and easier to explain for different people. And then also you don't have to explain yourself, because then they can read and see what's in the model to be able to understand. So this is a model, of course, with a 3D print, but you can make a model with, you can modelize your software or your user interface or your product with different ways. I mean, you can use Lego or you can use other simple tools. But visualization is very important, especially for the people working with, as I told you, the employees, so they know and that they can understand how the product is working. Of course, the user interface, on the other hand, should be as simple as possible, and maybe the user interface in some cases can be just a button or a start button or an input field or something. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a great documentation for that product. The second, or maybe the first problem is that you have different conflicts when you're designing your user interface. And this is one way that a model that I've been using to be able to show the different ways of values that you create. And just simply, here in the middle you have the user, and on this side I have what I call the working organization. Some organization that is providing some value for your customer. It can be, as an example, McDonald's, for example, you're serving hamburgers. And then you have your working organization. This is where you do the work, and here you have your business value. So here you usually sell something, and you can get charged for the product that you're using. And this is also what I call resources. The second part, and maybe that's the most important, the most interesting part, that's the customer perspective. And here is what you create customer value. And maybe that's not what you can sell, but that is what you want to give the customer. And that is what I call to please the customer, to make him happy, to make him want to use your product. And these are, of course, sort of conflicting. This is maybe more economics or cash or money, and this is more what I call quality parameters. So you have to work with to find what type of qualities does your customer want or need to do what he is supposed to do, or the service that you're designing. And then on this side, I call this the development organization. And I think this is, here you usually deliver something that you know what you're delivering. You're delivering the same thing all over again. You have standards, you have routines, you have documentation, what you should do. And on this side, in development, you don't have, usually you're creating something new here. You're doing something that you haven't done before. So if we start here, this is what I call research. This is, I don't know if you know this Bamse beer with this honey that makes you strong. This is where he gets his power. But that's what I call data, where you can collect data to be able to get user insights and understand if they you can use your site, or if they use your product. And this is also very important, but that's more for research purpose. And this part up here is maybe society. What is the English word for samhällsnytta? No.
For the common good.
Yeah, the common good. Exactly. And for me, the common good is sort of the impact that you're doing, or the product that you're doing. And if we go back to this picture here, this is the working organization. Here are the people that are doing things, that they are supposed to deliver some product, and maybe this is what the user see, but normally it's the effect that you want to achieve. You want something to happen when he uses your product. You want him to be happy, you want him to be satisfied, or you want him to solve a problem or something. So the effect is really what we should aim for. But we usually look very much what we are doing and don't think and have the possibility to view the effects here, why we are doing different things. And I think here is where you should start searching for your purpose when you're designing some products. What's the purpose for this product? what effect do I want to have, what effects do we want to have, instead of starting to see how many web pages can I do, or I don't know how you quantify that. I think it's 3 different things and all are necessary. But it's good to have a simple picture of effect, prestation and work. And here is the same thing. Working on the organization, this is what you give the customer, and this is the effects. And I just put some effects that can be anything, but it can be a sustainable working environment to make people happy to have a work where they can perform what they're supposed to do without being stressed or being I don't understand how what they are doing. I talked about the logic, and I think that's another difficult thing to understand and to work with, because you have system perspective and you have a user perspective, and the logic is completely different. And here I have also different type of system perspective. In the old world, before internet and everything, then we did things mechanically. When you turn on the light, for example, it was very mechanical, and when you turn it on, the light went on. So then you could understand. It was very easy to see what you were doing. Then we have electricity, and that's what I mean when you have a contactor or something that is you turn on something and then the contactor is pulling a switch and something happens. That's maybe more natural science. And then you have digital, and digital we can't see. It's when you make something digital, you built it, you design it, and it's only you who know how it's designed. So then you have to learn it. You have to make it so people can learn it, or make documentation or something else to be able to understand how that digital things are working. And then when you connect internet, then you also connect, then you usually have a user perspective, and that's why I call that social. So that makes it even more difficult to understand what's happening, because you have, in my world, I'm an engineer from the production industry, where you designed everything, a machine, for example, and you told the machine what to do. If you have a user, you never know what the user will do. He decides himself, and it's very difficult to predict that. So it becomes more and more difficult. And on the user perspective, you have, of course, the mental model, how he perceives the world, how he understands the world. And you can make user interfaces what I call intuitive, and you can make it learnable. And learnable is that you can hide everything behind something, and you say this button will always be there, file will always be up in the upper left, or that you have the same methodology all over again. But intuitive is when you must see what you're supposed to do. And I think that's if we take Apple as an example, if you think about the iPad or the iPhone, the whole user interface, all the buttons, they are sort of spread out on a big on the floor here. So you have all the icons, and then you only see the icons here. But when you move it across the map of icons, and it's very easy for your brain to understand that this service is 5 screens away, and you can understand, you can remember it, because it's the way the brain is working. But if you make your application with a lot of layers, that you're jumping between windows and jumping between layers, then you get lost very quick where you are, so you cannot find your way back. So this is just a way describing user perspectives. And this is maybe the most important or most difficult thing, because I think, especially when we talk mobile interfaces, basically we use it for communication. It's a communication tool. And communication is, you should send one information to a receiver. And on the way you have different channels, you must, you have a destination, you must interpret what you're saying. So it's can be, yeah, it's very difficult to get it right. So I think here we also have to learn much more how to be able to communicate effective. And also with the different channels, if you have email, you have SMS, you have Facebook, you have Slack, and you have hundreds of different communication tools. And if you talk here with someone, maybe you get the information, but you will not get it. So if you talk of user experience perspective, that's a nightmare, I would say, if you want to be able to communicate efficiently. And then now I have some examples, and I don't know if they're good and bad, but this is when they developed the iPhone, they sort of have two different types of iPhones and two teams developing it. So one team developed more the functions, the technical part, and one team developed the user interface and interaction design. And I think it's important I think that is one way to succeed, to don't have the same people do the same thing, because you use different logics and you have different problems that you need to solve. The thing is, of course, to put this together so it will work. And of course, you need maybe a large organization so you can have two teams working on it. And this I found, it was on Sydsvenskan. And I think you can say a lot. Here they have a process, it takes 25 steps to buy a ticket. But I think if you talk about perspective, here the perspective is very clear that they want to make it easy for them to collect your money. It's not to make it easy for you as a user to buy a ticket. And here I think you could, 2011 they have quite a lot of users, and I think today they even have more users. So I mean, here you could do a lot, and you can create a lot of value if you can make that simpler. But I think we end up where we started. UX design, you have functionality, technology, business logic, interactive logic, design, and corporate communication and business. I mean, it's all these different things that is involved in user experience, and it's a problem. And it makes it you have to be very creative to make